Want to welcome all of you, and I want to welcome my guest, Buck Taylor. We are so delighted that you were able to make it to Lone Pine.
Me too, Cheryl. This is the first time I've been here, and it's, you know, a history that I've had all my life since I was a very little boy. My dad, like your dad, worked in movies and came up here. And then I got, Gunga Din was one of my favorite movies as a little kid. And hadn't realized it was filmed here. I thought it was filmed in India. But
Sure.
What a great location, and I'm happy to be here and to keep this great history of our American film, Lone Pine film, and especially westerns. Although there were other movies filmed here, some great ones. You know,
yeah, incredible
Bad Day,
movies.
Black Rock, and Humphrey Bogart, High Sierra. I'd go on.
Now, I think most of you and the audience are going to remember Buck from Gunsmoke, where he was on there the whole run, weren't you?
Well, I was on the last 8 years, and
Yeah.
and I was very fortunate to be a part of that great show that is still running. It's been on 55 years now.
Wow.
And amazing. I just came from Dodge City. They had a celebration of the 55th year of Gunsmoke, and it's incredible. I got to, you know, I thought when I finished on Gunsmoke in 1975, I said, well, it was great, you know, and I'll go on to something else, and it's a nice. It's still going, and people are still watching it, and now I get little kids about this big. They don't know who I am because I looked a little different back then, but but it sure is interesting to see that show's still on the air. Bruce Boxleitner, who is here with us, had the fortune of being able to work with James Arness, not only on Gunsmoke,
McCann's, yeah.
but a great TV series called How the West Was Won, the McCanns, and we speak of Jim fondly because he's still with us, and we talk to him, and we see him occasionally, and what a great American Western icon and someone to look up to and respect, like John Wayne, Roy Rogers, you know.
Well, you've had such a busy career as an actor. I read that you studied art at USC.
I did.
Okay, but how in the world do you find time, since you're still working all the time as an actor, how do you find time to paint?
You know, it's difficult because there's a lot of things that I like to do. My passion is my wife, but I love my horses. I like to rope a lot, and I'll do it as long as I can. Rodeo and in the roping events. My wife's a barrel racer, so I love that part of our life. I raise some longhorn cattle. And I raise those for yard art and images that I paint in my paintings. Mm-hmm. So I have a few things that I really like to do. I like the business of my art business because I was never a businessman. Actors are people that hire people to work for them and negotiate for them and all that. So it's a little bit different. It's challenging, and it's fun, and I have fun doing that. But you know, to try to upkeep my ranch, that's a lot of work involved. Anyone has a ranch, they know it's never finished, and there's always holes in the fences and cows getting out, and we have wild hogs up there running around, feral hogs, which were domesticated at one time, Russian, you know, big boys.
Oh boy.
And they can cause problems. So it's just
havoc.
a constant, you know, ranches, everything breaks occasionally.
Yeah.
And we raise horses too. So I love that.
Now you've got a bunch of acting projects going. What, you just finished one and you're filming another and you've got 3 or 4 more in progress.
How do you know all this stuff?
Well, because I tried to do a little bit of homework.
Well, you're right. I did a film last year called The Legend of Hell's Gate, and that is an independent film. And an independent film it gives young actors, directors, and older actors a chance to experiment and to try to make a good film. Mm-hmm. They're not really expensive budgets on them, but it's a great way for older guys like myself and younger actors and actresses to stretch themselves and create maybe a different character, you know, and have some fun with it. And at this time in my life, the movies now are more fun than they used to be. I used to be scared to death. Turn that camera on, man, I'd freeze up. Bruce will tell you all about that. But now it's not, it's important, but not as important, all the fear factor. It's like I enjoy it now, and I'm more relaxed, and I have fun doing it. So I did this film called Hell's Gate, Legend of Hell's Gate, where I played a character, and I played him not unlike my dad would have played him, which we were kind of opposites, but now that I'm older and scraggly looking, I stole some things from my dad, and it was great doing that. I got another film that I just finished, and I hope it turns out to be a real big major motion picture. It's called Cowboys and Aliens. Steven Spielberg produced it along with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, and they got Jon Favreau, who's a terrific actor, director who does the Iron Man movies. They got him to direct it, and Harrison Ford stars in it along with Daniel Craig, who is James Bond, but not in this movie. And it's a story, and I can't tell you the story because they wouldn't let me read the script. They wouldn't let anybody read the script. So it's a story of cowboys in the 1870s, Indians, and aliens.
Wow.
And if anybody can pull that off, they can.
Spielberg can. Well, you know, let's face it. I mean, the Star Wars, that was cowboys and Indians.
Absolutely. Most anything action adventure is.
Sure.
You know, good over evil, and also, you know, elements threatening them. So it could be done real well, and it's done serious. It's not done as a comedy or anything like that. And I was privileged to work with my two sons in it. And,
great.
Bruce and I are good friends, Bruce Boxleitner, and he has the great privilege of working with his sons. They're behind the camera and in front of the camera, but we discuss how much fun it is to work with our boys, you know.
Your boys do stunt work and acting?
They do, yeah. They're both stuntmen, and in this case, they had to do stunts in the scene that we're in Cowboys and Aliens, which is the very beginning of the movie. And I'm actually their father. We're scalp hunters, so we're kind of, we're not very nice guys, but and I've got these two sons of mine. They had big red beards, and they grew them themselves, and I had a longer beard and long hair and all that. And I never laughed so hard. I couldn't keep myself from laughing. They're supposed to be real serious, too. And it was funny, but I never had so much fun all my life. And Bruce will tell you that. His son is a boom operator. And he's got a photograph of his son holding the boom and him doing a scene, you know. So those things are priceless. And so I did that film. And they tell me that I'm in the Big Valley, a movie that they're going to make with, at first it was Susan Sarandon, and I don't know who they're going to get now. They're, you know, it's on hold. They were going to start a couple months ago, and they're still going to do it, but I'm not sure.
Well, casting can be so difficult, especially when the top actors have their commitments years out.
Well, you get one person, and Susan broke her ankle, I think, so that that kind of put her out of it. But it's been on and off again, and you start losing people, you know, after a while.
Now, will this be based on the series, The Big Valley?
Yes, I read the script, and it's Victoria Barkley. And
we all love that. So.
The son, you know, there's Heath, and I can't remember all the sons, but in this one, they have her husband who dies in the movie, and that's being played by Lee Majors.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, yeah, because we never got to see him on the series. No. He was already gone.
Well, the father was, but Lee played Heath.
Right.
And it's kind of could be interesting, I guess, story. I tried out for that part of Heath. And it boiled down to three actors, James Caan, Lee Majors, and myself. And so we all tested for it, and we're waiting around to get the results and all that, and it was just the three of us. So James Caan calls me, he says, Buck, he says, they want me for this part, man. And I'm thinking, well, congratulations, you know. He said, but I'm under contract to Universal, and they won't let me out to do it. And anyway, make a long story short, I guess I was third on the list because they wanted Lee Majors, and he got the part. But I got Gunsmoke right after that, so it was okay. But so I went in the interview for this part, and these producers, I told them that story. So when I got back home, I tested for it in Louisiana, where they're going to make it. And they said, we decided we want you to play the crooked sheriff who kills Lee Majors. It's your revenge. I said, really? So I thought that was pretty neat, so I hope they make this movie. I got to get even with Lee.
I mean, with Hollywood, you never know.
Oh, listen, Hollywood, that's a different story.
Let's talk a little bit about your dad. I loved him as a little kid.
Me too.
I bet. I don't know how anybody could help it, but as a little kid, he was so funny and so unpredictable. I mean, he fascinated me. And even though Dad and your dad didn't get to work together, they saw a lot of each other. And I, being the oldest, I tagged along with Daddy a lot. So I have such fond memories of your dad and how just crazy he was.
Well, he was the funniest man I ever met, actually. And that's your dad, you know. But he was serious and a disciplinarian and all that, but funny, you know, naturally funny. And I know he had some great times dove hunting with Roy Rogers and my dad, and even Clark Gable and people like that. Yeah. Kind of a strange group of guys would go down to Southern California like that, doves. You know, Edgar Bergen, you know, Charlie McCarthy's dad. And he liked to dove hunt.
Yeah.
A lot of actors did at that time. And had some great times and a lot of fun. But my dad was really funny, and he was my favorite of all of them, you know.
Yeah. Well, with the young people, I think probably Hee Haw, because that was on for so long and all. They probably remember him better
he
from
did
that
a lot of
than
the
the
Hee Haw
movies,
shows,
but,
and actually the last film he did was partially filmed here, Maverick, with what was that guy?
Mel
Gibson. Yeah. And that was the last show he did, and he passed away about 3 or 4 months after that. So he worked right up till the very end, which is great, you know. And I hope I can do that too.
That's a wonderful thing about acting and
you
art.
You never have to retire. You paint as long as you can, like Andrew Wyeth and some other great painters. And in the movies, you just get older and better, and then you get to where you don't care. You just do it. And like my dad, he couldn't hear very well, so they had this scene in Back to the Future where him and Pat Buttran and Dobie Carey were sitting at a table, and my dad told Dobie, he says, kick my leg, and then I'll start talking. And so they were rehearsing, and then they started to film it. Dobie accidentally kicked his leg, and my dad started, you know, the way he talked. Well, boys, I don't know what to tell y'all, but, you know. And they said, cut, Doug, you're not yet. So, you know, he had a lot of fun working when he was a little older in life, too. And everybody enjoyed it. Like, there's stories I can't tell about him that are really funny.
Yeah, Dad liked telling those. We would like to have y'all ask some questions. So does anybody out there have one? And just hold your hand up and we can get a mic for you, I'm hoping. Yes, I think Dee's got it. It's on. Okay, so hold your hand up if you would, and great, wonderful.
What was your name on Gunsmoke? Did you play Newly?
Newly.
I did play Newly, and
I want to ask, I bought that painting that you made in that. his wife here last year, and do you still paint?
I do. I sure do. I paint.
That's really good. I put it
Yeah.
in a frame. I got it on my wall.
Well, thank you. Is that the one of my dad and I?
Do what?
Was it a painting of my dad and myself?
No, it's a picture of Matt Dillon.
Oh yeah. Well, I did. I was.
Barnett's, yeah.
And you signed it, we kept a lid on Dodge City.
That's right. Well, Jim Arness, he named that painting. I said, Jim, I said, it's a painting of you. You name it.
That
And
was a real good.
he said, just tell him that he kept the lid on Dodge. And that's what he named it. Thank you.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, that haven't been over to the museum yet, Buck has a wonderful display, not only in the lobby, but also one of the back corner rooms as well. So be sure and go over there and see Buck and his wife Goldie and talk to them, buy prints. And
Well, I'll tell you, more so than that even is this fantastic museum full of film history from Lone Pine. I was blown away when I saw it. It's beautiful. I mean, it's well done, well, you know, the way they have everything designed, the movie posters, the great posters that they have here.
wonderful posters.
And it's a must-see. You should see it. And they've done a great job with it. Beverly and Jim Rogers, I believe, started it. And it's beautiful.
So another question? Yes, over here. Oh,
Buck, how'd you get newly in Gunsmoke?
Oh, that's an interesting. I'm glad you asked that question, especially coming from one of Gunsmoke's great writers, Jim Burns,
oh.
right there. Jim Burns. He wrote some of the best Gunsmokes we did. Also produced it, and also produced other shows. And he's a good friend of mine. Him and his lovely wife. I tested for this part of Newley. The guy's name was Newley Jorgensen. They wanted, like, you know, a young James Arness, a Norwegian type guy. So they tested 5 guys, different, you know, types. And I was fortunate to end up with the part. And they said, well, you don't really look like a Jorgensen, and you're Irish, so we'll call you O'Brien. I said, all right. But Newley, well, in the script, my Uncle Newton was, I think, a doctor. And he gave me his doctor's bag. And they called me Newley after him for short. So it was Newley. And then I got on that stagecoach with Miss Kitty, and these bad guys saw me climbing on there with a doctor's bag, and they said, you know, our brother John Saxon is wounded, or John Saxon's brother is wounded, and this guy, we're going to kidnap him, and he's going to fix him up, and then we'll shoot him. Well, I'm in there with Miss Kitty, and they kidnapped both of us, and we have this confrontation. They put us in a cave, and they isolate Kitty and I in this cave, and she says, well, Doc, you better think of, you know, hope you do a good job. And I said, well, ma'am, I'm not a doctor. I'm a gunsmith. And I had my gunsmith tools in the bag. So I was a very inventive young guy at that time, and I was able to make a gun out of a piece of pipe and some other things. And anyway, to make a long story short, I had a gun on him, and we got out of there, and of course Jim Arness saved us, and Festus. But that was how Newley started, and boy, I was lucky. I just to be with a group of fine actors, and the shows were good because it was good over bad. The good guy wins. My dad said it the best. He said that it's real simple. Matt Dillon, the bad guy comes in, Matt Dillon comes in there and beats the hell out of him.
That's simple. Okay, we had other people with questions. Oh,
Among the many things I can no longer remember is your brother's name.
My brother?
Yes.
I don't have a brother.
Maybe that's why I couldn't remember.
okay. If you would please pass the microphone over here. Thank you very much.
Very catchy.
I just wondered which of your dad's films is your personal favorite?
My dad's movies?
Yes.
Gosh, Bonnie and Clyde, he was really good in that.
Yeah.
I watched that recently, and it was a great change of being a real happy, nice guy to in front of Bonnie and Clyde. And then when they left, he turned into this good father who was disciplining his son, from getting them tattoos all over him and all that. And your mother be ashamed of you, and all that kind of stuff. So he had a great part in that movie. The Undefeated was good with John Wayne, he was the cook in that. So those two were really favorites of mine. And I'll tell you what, all the old Wild Bill Elliott westerns that he did years ago, where he was Cannonball and he played the xylophone and all that, I love those. To this day, I watch them and the songs that he sang in them. And then later with Russell Hayden, he was his sidekick with Bob Wills and Texas Playboys as their band. Those were really neat films, and my dad really did some funny things. And maybe I was the only guy that thought he was funny, but he sure made me laugh. Man,
Everybody thought he was
I'm
funny,
telling
and
you.
he was such a good musician.
Oh, he's a great musician. He sure was. And I'll just tell you how I was born in Hollywood. My dad was born in Georgia, and then they moved to Oklahoma City when he went to high school. He graduated, went into vaudeville, and played the xylophone and the harmonica, and really played it good. I mean, one of the best in the world, literally. Then vaudeville fell out, and he went back to Oklahoma City, didn't know what he was going to do, and he read this ad in a newspaper that said, Frank Capra is looking for someone who plays an unusual instrument. And my dad said, that's I got to try that. So he gets in a car with my mom, who's pregnant with me and my sister, and he drives to Hollywood, and Frank Capra sees him and says, yeah, that's it, you're hired. So I was born in an apartment building, the La Paula Apartments on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Western Boulevard. So that makes me a bona fide Hollywood Western cowboy.
Very good. Yes?
I had two questions. Could you draw as a kid, and any remembrances about Tombstone?
Yes, I could draw as a little guy. In fact, that's all you had to do with me. I'd take my folks would take me somewhere, stack of crayons and paper, and I'm fine. It's someone who likes to paint. It's not something that they necessarily want to do. It's something they have to do, and that's what I did. And fond memories of the movie Tombstone, extremely fond. I knew it was going to be a great movie that was written so well. And to make it even better, my son Matt, who is a stuntman, got his break from Terry Leonard in doing stunts in a real big film. And my other son Adam was the first assistant director on it and was in the Guild at 27 years old as a first assistant director. And that's a real tough job. That's like being a master sergeant in the Army at a young age. And it was such a great thing to be able to work with him and to watch him and my other son, and to be with all those really good actors, it was
Great cast.
a wonderful experience. And it was a funny feeling, though. I mean, when you're in something good, you kind of know it. And Val Kilmer was so good in it. Everyone was, and Charlton Heston, gosh almighty, was the director of photography, William Fraker, just first-class people, and the costuming, the guns, the whole thing just kind of fell together as a very entertaining movie and well-written. I think kind of a classic.
Anybody else? Yes.
I was brought up in the San Fernando Valley myself, so where in San Fernando Valley did you live?
I lived on Colfax Avenue near Moore Park, right across from the junior high, which was built the year I was born in 1938. And there was nothing, it was a dirt road, and walnut trees and citrus trees orange trees and all different types of citrus trees all over the San Fernando Valley.
Went to North Hollywood High School.
Went to North Hollywood High School and hung out, well, I was near Republic Studios, where her dad was under contract, made a ton of movies. My dad did too, John Wayne did. And well, I would walk to school as a little boy, and I walked right past Republic Studios in the morning, and the cowboys would all be across the street having coffee, parked outside their trucks and cars and all that. And I knew them from my dad because they all, you know, actually cowboys that came to work to Hollywood. And one of them was a guy named Tex Cooper. And I find out only later, like a couple of years ago, that, and I loved him. He's a guy, had long gray hair and a beard. Well, I'm getting to look like him. I got this. But I just thought he was the greatest, man. And I found out that he was born in 1870 or 60-something. He was the master of ceremonies at the 101 Ranch, but he'd also driven cows up the trail. And he was a real deal, and I didn't know that till later. But I'd walk to school and say hello to Tex and Big Boy Williams, those kind of guys. And Republic Studios was right near our home. And I'd get up on top of this hill before I go into Carpenter Avenue School, where I went, Studio City. And I'd look back at the studios, and through the whitewashed building, it said Mack Sennett Studios. So it had been there a long time. And it was Mack Sennett Studios at one time. Then it became CBS Studio Center, which it still is, and that's where we filmed Gunsmoke. I delivered papers in there at 9 years old. You know, had a paper out, and there was a real river going through it. Then they cemented it in like an aqueduct, you know.
Remember riding the horses
Oh, yeah.
from Republic Studios down to Universal? Was
Universal.
It?
Actually,
Yeah.
I didn't ride
You
horses.
ride down the river.
I didn't ride horses, Cheryl, but I did. There was a canoe that was outside, and I just couldn't help it. As a kid, I went over there and got in that and rode it down to Universal. I figured I'd leave it at another studio, at least I wasn't stealing it, you know.
Now, in high school, because we went to rival schools, I went to Canoga, but Buck was a top gymnast in high school, and he's the first or one of the first high school students that could hold an iron cross on the rings.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But I like that a lot. And you know what? Burt Lancaster, you see his movies. I love that swashbuckling stuff, you know, and that's why I became a gymnast, because it scared me to death for one reason, you know, doing somersaults and things, but I kind of got over my fear of it. But the gymnastics was a result of Douglas Fairbanks Sr., and which I hadn't seen too much of. It's silent movies, you know, but Burt Lancaster influenced me enough I wanted to do that. And later on in my life, I did a movie with him called Catalani and Little Britches.
Oh, yeah.
And all we did was talk about gymnastics, or he was a high bar man, and so was I. But he worked in the circus, and had great conversations with him, and I just thought the world of him.
Didn't you try out for the Olympic team?
I did, but I wasn't good enough to make it.
Any other questions out there? No? Oh,
What's your birthday?
5/13/38, May 13th, Friday the 13th. I was born on Friday the 13th. And it's been really good luck for me ever since.
yes, sir.
Yes, you were mentioning earlier about Quanah Parker and Chief of the Comanches. I was wondering if you had ever met any of the Parker family.
You know, I have. I did in Fort Worth, Texas, about 2 or 3 years ago. One of his great-grandsons, perhaps, or grandson. Yes, I have. The reservation is in Oklahoma. You know, it's still there. Quanah Parker was quite a guy. He was about 6'4", and a friend of Charles Goodnight, and became a member of the Masonic Lodge, which Charles Goodnight and Oliver Loving were part of, and it's kind of interesting, you know, and became like a land developer kind of guy, you know. I mean, he was something else. His mother, was kidnapped from South Texas.
Cynthia.
Cynthia Ann Parker.
Yeah.
And where they found her, which was Charles Goodnight was a ranger along with Saul Ross, but they found her, captured her right near where I live on the Pease River, and I live on the Brazos River, so I mean I like all that stuff. But yeah.
I'm getting the sign that we have to wrap up. I'm so glad
Are
that
you
were-
accusing me of talking too much?
No, no, no. No. Otherwise, I mean, we would just keep going. But I think what they're doing is telling me they're running out of film. So
I want to thank Robert Barron for the great job he did with the museum
Oh,
that's here. And
yes.
I would hope that everyone that sees this will go visit it and visit this town.
yes, if you haven't been to the museum, please get over there. They've got just some wonderful things, and you will see Buck's art over there. As I say, we've got a temporary display and then a display that's going to be here for several months, I understand. So be sure and get over there and see it. Thank you again, and thank you, Buck.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, it's
for being with
wonderful.
us.
Hope we do it again.
Yeah,